Hi, happy Sunday. We are live. Welcome. I'm so glad to have you joining us. We'll give everyone a few minutes to come in and get settled. I'm really excited tonight to talk about college fit. It is a really important topic that I've been talking personally with a lot of my seniors about college fit now that they've already been admitted to some colleges, and younger students as they're starting to think about college fit and what schools will be a good fit for them as they're getting ready to embark on this college journey. And so I wanted to hop on tonight and talk a little bit more about college fit. What does that mean? Why is it important? And why is it something that you and your students should be thinking about, regardless of where they are in the process? So, whether you have a freshman through a senior, college fit is still something that they should be thinking about. So, that's what we'll be focusing on tonight. I am Gina. If you are new here and new to our Facebook Live events, I'm Gina with Advantage College Planning. And I like to hop on every few weeks with a different topic to hopefully demystify a little bit of this application process and help you and your students make really intentional, informed decisions along the way. So if you can hear me and everything is coming through great, then just go ahead and drop your name in the chat. Let me know where you're coming in from. And I'd love to know if I've got local students or people coming in from all over the US. Advantage College Planning is located here in the Raleigh, North Carolina area, but we do work with students all over the US. And I've even had some international students as well. So love to know who I'm talking to. And also, if you are a student or a parent, if you could just let me know what year you are in school, that's also super helpful so I can make sure I'm sharing information that'll be relevant to you wherever you are in this process. So again, welcome. Go ahead and add those notes in. We'll be using the chat. And I'll also be using the chat to see your questions as well. So as we're going through, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. And we'll be going kind of back and forth between our content for tonight and our questions that are coming up from the audience. Awesome. Ooh, we've got a senior, a local. Ooh, one of my families is here. Wonderful. That's always really exciting. Good to see you guys. Great. All right. Well, we'll go ahead and get started. So again, tonight we are going to be talking about college fit. And so the first thing I really wanted to talk about is, why am I talking about this? Why does college fit matter? Why is that such an important part of the process that I've put it in all caps? And so I really like to start here because if you think about the college search process, there are almost 3,000 four-year colleges in the United States. That's a really big number to start from. And we know that your students, wherever they are in the process, may have a dream school right now. They may have one or two dream schools, right? But the reality is that multiple schools could actually be a really good fit for them, for their learning style, for their personality, for their goals, and also for your financial planning. That's an important part of the process. So we're going to talk about that as well. By focusing on fit, we're able to really empower students in this process. So instead of students feeling like they have to mold themselves like putty, right, into this shape that may be a little bit unnatural for them or maybe doesn't quite feel comfortable, so that they feel like they're good enough to be able to be admitted to their dream school, instead of taking that approach, which feels really uncomfortable and unnatural, we're switching the power dynamic. Your students actually are empowered in this process if they start thinking about, well, what's going to be a good place for me? I'm the consumer, right? The student and the family, you are the consumer in this process. And so you really should be thinking about not how do I help my student fold themselves into origami to fit into this one spot at this one specific school, but more thinking about, what about that school is actually going to serve my student well, where they're going to live and learn for the next 4 years. So by focusing on fit, you're being empowered to really make intentional choices that are going to be the best fit for your student, not only throughout that application process, but then also those 4 years that they're going to be living and learning on that college campus. So let's talk about let's jump right in and start talking about the first types of fit. So there's 3 different types of fit that I'm always looking at with students: academic, personal, and financial. So schools really need to be lining up in all 3 of those categories. And, college can feel really stressful and overwhelming and big, right? So let's make this feel a little bit smaller and more tangible and more concrete. Let's think about buying a new pair of sneakers. Okay. You're going to buy a new pair of sneakers. There are so many different types of sneakers you can buy, right? You could buy high tops, you could buy Vans, you could buy slides, laces, Velcro. What kind of sport do you play? There's so many options, right? So going into Fleet Feet or DSW or online, wherever you buy your sneakers, you probably have some considerations in mind, right? You're not going into this thinking, well, this specific brand is the brand that I really want to buy because I've heard that that's the best brand. Maybe you have that in mind, but are you willing to fold your feet into a strange contorted way in order to make your feet fit into that shoe? No, you wouldn't do that, right? That's crazy. You'd be limping everywhere and getting blisters, right? So think about it in the same way. If you're buying sneakers, you go in with considerations, right? Are you an athlete? If you are an athlete, what kind of athlete are you? Are you a basketball player? You need a high top, right? Are you a cross country runner? You need something very different with support in different places. Okay. How will you be using the sneaker is an important consideration into what kind of sneaker you're buying. Then we also need to think about, okay, what does your foot look like? What kind of footbed do you need? Do you need a high arch? Do you have some plantar fasciitis going on that you need a little support with? Right? These are the considerations. And then what colors do you like? Do you want something super jazzy? Do you want a pair of sneakers that can match with everything? And then lastly, you're going to be thinking about cost, right? How much are you interested in spending on this pair of sneakers? Maybe you have a really specific budget and your bank account will not let you go past that budget. Maybe you have a little bit of freedom with your bank account and you can spend, a wide range of amount on these sneakers. But how much are you interested in spending on a pair of sneakers? What amount is really going to be a good fit for you? You're going to feel good about and you're going to feel is worth your while. Okay. So if we're thinking about sneakers, something that we purchase probably more than once a year, if we can apply that same college or that same concept to the college fit factors, it starts to make it a little bit more tangible. So let's talk about academic fit first. Okay. So academic fit first is going to think about, obviously, if your student has a specific major in mind, we want to make sure the school has that major, right? So just like with the sneakers, if you are looking for a pair of sneakers to play basketball in, then clearly we need something with some ankle support, right? So if we're having a specific major in mind, we want to find schools that have that major or have different options with that major, but it doesn't end there. We also want to think about what kind of learner is your student? What kind of classes do they really excel in? Are they a student who their academic success really seems to depend a little bit on the type of relationship they have with the teacher? Or does their academic success depend a lot on how accessible the teacher is outside of class? Maybe they're more of a hands-on projects kind of student, or maybe they really love a lecture where they can just sit, they can be introverted, they're not going to get called on, they don't need to have discussions in front of the class, they can just do their work, right? All of that feeds into academics. And so when we get to college, there's so many different styles of learning that happen on college campuses. Some are going to be more of those traditional lecture styles with professors who may be not as accessible. They're there to focus on their research. And for some students, that's completely fine. For other students who really rely on those deep connections and that mentoring and that relationship to help them engage with the material and stay motivated, that type of academic environment isn't going to set them up for success. So these are the types of things we need to be thinking about with academics. When your student's going to college, we want to make sure that they are academically prepared for the rigor that they're going to face at that college. So that's another piece of academic fit. A lot of times students are looking right now with my juniors, we're looking a lot at what does the typical admitted student profile look like at X school? And we're looking at the types of GPAs or test scores that the students might have at this school and sort of gauging, where the student falls currently in relation to the typical admitted profile for that school. That's an important piece to look at, not just from the admission standpoint. A lot of times I think that students get caught up in seeing that line as a bar that they just need to meet and cross and move on. But actually there's a lot of really great information in there. So if your student is, working incredibly hard and as hard as they possibly can to just barely meet that bar, right? Then that should give them some type of indication of what their workload and what their personal stress might be like academically if they are admitted to and enroll at that school, right? So these are things that we need to be considering so that when your student transitions into this college, for the next 4 years. They're able to feel really confident in their academic abilities. Of course, there are going to be some bumps. We all know that. But when those bumps happen, they are confident enough in their ability, and the setting is an appropriate setting for them in terms of their learning style, in terms of the program that they want to pursue, to really help them continue to move forward. What about a student who doesn't know their major? Don't I need to have that figured out to check this academic box? No, you don't. You do not need to know exactly what you want to do for the rest of your life when you're 17 years old. I'm sure many of us on this call right now didn't know at 17, and maybe some of us are still figuring it out, and that's okay, right? But that's part of the academic fit. So if your student isn't quite sure what he or she wants to major in yet, that's not cause for alarm. But then we do need to be targeting schools that maybe have really strong programs for advising for incoming students who are still exploring. Or maybe we want to look at schools that don't require students to choose a major right upon entry freshman year. Maybe start at a school that gives you a little bit of time to work with an advisor, explore, take some classes, and then figure out what your best fit is going to be. So all of that goes into academic fit. It's more than just check the box. The school has my major. Yay, moving on, right? We need to be a little bit more intentional than that so that we're setting the student up for success, again, in the admissions process, but also beyond. The next aspect of fit is personal fit, right? So this is where we were thinking about, what does your footbed look like? Plantar fasciitis. I personally have some high arches myself, right? Do you need any kind of specific structure within that shoe to make it comfortable and function well for you, the consumer? That's where personal fit comes in. So if your student knows that he or she really wants to play a specific sport in college, a musical instrument, be involved in theater, any of those arts types of activities, then we want to make sure that we're putting them in the best position to be able to continue that in college. If that's a really big part of their identity and how they see themselves, then we want them to continue to have that as they transition into college. But it goes beyond, again, do they have my sport, right? What if my student's not an athlete? So personal fit also incorporates the vibe of the campus, right? What does it feel like when you go to visit the campus? How are the students interacting with each other? I personally am very extroverted. So I'm looking for a college campus, or I was looking for a college campus, and I still look for this when I visit. How much are the students interacting with each other across the quad? Right? As classes are changing, I like to watch and see what happens. Are people waving to each other, saying hello as they pass? Is there a lot of interaction and, kind of little hellos and waves and interactions between students? I need that to feel like, oh, okay, these are my people. I feel happy, right? Another student might say that is really uncomfortable for me and I wouldn't want that, or I don't even notice that, right? So what is your personality type? How does that fit? You also want to think about, does your student want to be in a city? Do they want to be somewhere more rural, right? What kind of environment do they want to be in? Is your student involved do they really love the outdoors? That's a big one, right? If your student is really actively involved in hiking, kayaking, hunting, fishing, those kinds of activities, then they might want to pursue a school that has a really active outdoors club where they can borrow a kayak from the library as well as a book, just using their student ID card. This is where I like to tell students, think about who will you be on this campus? Because unlike high school, in college, you're only in class for 12 to 15 hours a week on average, right? That first and second semester. The rest of the time, you're studying, of course, and you're getting your work done, but you're also living your life and you're growing up and you're becoming this person that you're going to be, and you're engaging in activities that are meaningful to you. So what does the campus offer? For some students, that also means thinking about the weather. So here in the Raleigh, North Carolina area, it's pretty warm, right? And sometimes I'll have students say, oh, I wouldn't mind going to a school where it snows. And so we have to have a bigger conversation about that. So if you have grown up in a place where snow, happens maybe once or twice a winter and it goes away because the sun melts it in a day or two, that is very different than going to college in a location where it snows feet for months out of the year. Very different, right? So these are the things that we need to start thinking about. Are you very affected by the amount of sunshine that you're exposed to? That's a very real thing to consider in terms of your happiness. So that's the personal fit. The third type of fit is or is financial fit. And so usually this is where the students kind of check out and the parents kind of lean in a little closer when I talk about financial fit. But this is equally, of the three, it's an equal pie, right? Three equal pieces. Financial fit is incredibly important when we're thinking about making an investment as large as the college education, right? Just like with sneakers or a car or your house or any other significant purchase, how much you are investing in that purchase is important to consider. If you are one of our junior families, you may have hopped on a webinar that my colleague Brooke actually did for our families earlier this evening, thinking about the financial aid process and getting ready for college. And one of the things she said at the very end of that webinar is one thing that I always think about and say to my families, which is, it's really important early on in the process for parents and the student to have a conversation and have some transparency around how are we planning to afford the cost of college and how much are we planning to spend on each year of college for 4 years? What is the game plan? And I know that sometimes that's really awkward for families. They feel like the parents may feel like we don't talk about finances with our children. That's a boundary. I completely respect that. But in this case, it is going to serve you and your child, or if your students are on here, it'll serve you and your parents well if you can get through that awkwardness and have that conversation. Because if everyone is on the same page about at the very minimum, how much has been set aside for college or how much is the family planning to spend per year, then that can help the family and the student and the consultant, if you're working with a consultant, suggest and research and start to fall in love with schools that are an appropriate fit financially. As Brooke said, the worst thing from our perspective that can happen is if we aren't aware of any financial information or limitations, and then the student falls in love with a school and they're admitted, and then the family gets the financial aid information and realizes this is completely inappropriate for what we were planning to spend. And so then the family either needs to spend more than they wanted to, or try to figure out a way to cover this cost, or tell the student this isn't a good fit and we have to pick a different school. That's not a good feeling for anyone involved in the process. There are steps. So now let's talk about what to do. Next steps. So for research, right? Academic planning and academic fit, a lot of that, and personal fit and financial fit, actually those three, really, you can start on the college websites. Start there. It is free and you do not have to travel. So go to the college website, start with academics on the college's page, click on the academics page, and first start looking at the majors. Look to see what they offer, even for my still deciding students. If you're not sure of your major, just what's out there? What do they have that's piquing your interest? What looks interesting to you? Then start to look around a little bit more, right? Look to see, okay, most colleges will have what their average class size is, or some information about kind of size and that type of thing. But then to learn a little bit more about the academics, that's when the campus visit is really helpful, because you can go a lot of times now that we're hopefully on the other side of COVID. There are colleges that will allow you to sit in on a class or meet with a professor. Even if you're not able to do that, when you go on your campus tour, it's typically a college student at that campus who's leading the tour. Talk to them, ask them questions, ask them. I was on a campus tour on Friday and I asked the tour guide, what's been your biggest class so far? And what's been your smallest class? Just to gauge, right? And then I follow up with, okay, this many students were in your largest class. How did that work? Was there a lecture and then a seminar? Because that's pretty common. You'll have a big lecture with, a couple of hundred people in that class with the professor. And then there might be a smaller seminar section with, let's say, 20 students for discussion. Who's teaching the seminar? Is it the professor? Is it a teaching assistant? These are the types of things that you can find out if you go on the tour and you ask the student. Same thing happens with personal fit. So again, start with the website. It's free and easy. So click on sections like student life or campus recreation, clubs and organizations, events. Look to see what students are doing. If you're interested in the outdoors club, do they have an outdoors club, right? What do they have? Who will you be on this campus? What are you interested in now? Do they have anything that would fit what you're interested in now? But then also give yourself room to grow, right? The third is and then again, visit campus. So once you visit the campus, so your next step after you've researched online, seems like a good fit, when you're visiting the campus, that's when you get the vibe, right? That's when you can see what's happening when people are crossing between the classes. Are people smiling at you? I always look at that. I'm walking around campus either with a folder, right, or a bag or a sticker. Somehow you're very well marked, right? If you've ever done a campus tour, you're very well marked. You're not looking cool. You've got all this stuff that you're carrying. It's obvious that you are not a current student. You're not blending it, right? How do students interact with you as you're walking across? Do they say hello, welcome to our campus? If you're standing there looking around after the campus tour ends and you're trying to go back to the library or a certain building, does anybody ask you if you need help, right? That also gives you a little bit of a vibe. Okay, this is kind of how the students are, and how do I feel about that? That last one is that financial fit. And I've left this up the whole time because that is a very important piece that I want to make sure we're not glossing over. So again, the financial fit. Online, you have options. So every single college, by law, on their website has to have a net price calculator. If you go on their website, you can just put it up in the search bar. Usually it's on the financial aid page. Net price calculator. You would enter in, and the parent typically would enter in the family's financial information, general information. You'll really need just your tax return from the previous year. If you have that, you'll have the big numbers they need. And then that will give you an estimate, kind of a zoomed out view of what your cost may be for 1 year for your student to attend. It's not a guarantee. You can't print it out and bring it to financial aid and say, you said I was going to get this, but it at least gives you a ballpark, right? Like, should we continue to pursue this school, or is this one that maybe we kind of move past? If you don't want to go to every single college website, or maybe your student's a little earlier in the process, you also can go to the College Board has a separate site called Big Future, and you can go to the Big Future site, which is run through the College Board. Those are the folks that do the SAT and your students' AP classes. There is an EFC, estimated family contribution. We love acronyms in higher ed. There is an EFC calculator, and it's going to ask for the same information. You put in your family's big numbers from your tax return, and they will give you an estimate of what the colleges will be anticipating that you could pay for 1 year of tuition at their institution. And so then you can compare that EFC, that number that you get, to the different colleges that the sticker price of the colleges that your student may be interested in. As you're looking at sticker price, just know that, at many schools, students do not pay the sticker price to attend because of scholarships, because of financial aid. But doing these things ahead of time and getting these numbers ahead of time can at least start to shape the way that you're looking at the financial aspect of the college list. Now, once you're on campus, again, you're going to go for these visits. Once you're on campus, you can make an appointment with the Office of Financial Aid. So they will not be able to give you a specific financial aid package and give you a number of this is exactly how much it would cost for your family to attend. They can't do that. But they can have a general conversation with you around financial aid. You may be able to give them some round numbers. They may be able to give you some round numbers, just so that you have an idea of what to expect. And so when you're setting up your campus tour with the admissions office, you can also reach out to the financial aid office and make an appointment with them, or you can reach out to your specific admissions counselor. The student can reach out to their specific admissions counselor at that college and say, hi, I'm coming for a visit on this date at this time. While I'm on campus, I also would love to sit in on a class, or I also would love to meet with a student who's in this major, or I'd also love to meet with financial aid or the basketball coach or whatever. So you can ask to do some additional things while you're on your visit. The worst thing they can say is no, but usually they'll try to accommodate your request because, again, you're the consumer at this point. You have all the power. Remember that you have the power. So be intentional and look for schools that are going to be a good fit for you and not trying to fold yourself into origami the other way around. So bottom line is being intentional about the schools that your student is choosing now is going to give them the best options and the smoothest application process, because they'll know why a school is on their list. They'll know this school meets everything that they're looking for. And it's also going to give your student the best options to choose from once they get their acceptance letters and they make that decision of what school they're going to attend by May 1st. And we also know that if a student picks a school that is a good fit for them academically, personally, and financially, then they are setting themselves up for a successful transition in and a successful 4 years afterward. So that is an overview of the 3 fit factors. And so now I'd like to just open it up for Q&A. I didn't see any questions come in the chat while I was chatting. But if you have any questions, go ahead and feel free to put them in the chat. While I'm giving everyone a chance to do that, I will let you know that I will be back next week. So usually I'm not so back to back, but next week I will be back. And so we're going to talk about college scholarships and how to apply for them. If you're a senior and you've already been admitted to schools, what can I be doing for scholarships? If you're a junior or a sophomore, what should I be thinking about scholarships? How can I plan ahead? So that's what we'll be talking about next Sunday. Same fun time, same fun station here on our Facebook Live, 8 o'clock. But yeah, so if you have, so I've got juniors and then, we had parent of a senior, Caroline, great. So for your senior, Caroline, one thing to think about is, at this point, she may have already, or he or she may have already completed all of their applications. But now that they're getting their admissions decisions back, now is a good time to go back and say, okay, I've been admitted. What made this school a good fit for me in the first place? And what continues to make this school a good fit for me? Throughout senior year, students sometimes pick up new hobbies, right? Or they're young. We're talking about 16, 17, 18-year-old people here, right? Like who they are as a person is changing so much at this age, which is what makes it such a fun age to work with. And so if they've picked up a new hobby or a new interest, or they've moved on from something that was a really big focus and now they're into something new, that's fine. That's great. That's part of growth. What does the college offer now that could be a good fit? So really starting to compare each of those schools that your student's been admitted to. And I personally love a good spreadsheet. I love a good Google Sheet myself. And I think it's a great way to just visually be able to see, here's the college, here are my fit factors, this is what I'm looking for, and here's exactly what they offer that is a good fit for me. So that's something that you can start to do with your student as those exciting acceptances come in. Awesome. All right. Well, thanks so much for joining me tonight. This was really great. It's always so fun to hop on here and talk to all of you. I hope you have a great rest of your weekend, and I look forward to seeing you back here next week. Have a good one. Bye.